Life.
Good morning, Docstar TV and mushroom fans. I'm Oliver coming to you live from Bangkok, Thailand, late at night, where every Tuesday we are going to explore something that's amazing and powerful that awaits you inside Thunder Shrooms to help you unlock your maximum healing potential. So today's episode is called, Is This Thing Really a Mushroom? But before I answer that question, let's do a little quick recap of what we went over last week so that each week, I hope we can build on what we talk about together so that, after a few episodes, after a few sessions, you'll feel like something of a mushroom head, something of a medicinal mushroom expert. You'll feel comfortable, you'll feel confident that you're getting the best out of the thunder shrooms for your own health. So last week, we talked about the golden balance. And very quickly, the golden balance simply refers to our life being in a constant state of balance and rebalance. And in our immune system, that's no different in the sense that our immune system has different parts and different components. And the two key parts are the T1 and the T2 immune system. And when they're in balance, we have a very healthy, functioning immune system. And when they're out of balance, we see things like autoimmune conditions increase their occurrence, increase their symptoms. We see earlier signs of aging, and we see overall just imbalance leading to disharmony of our overall human systems, and our health takes a hit because any state of balance that's like this is simply not sustainable. So our body is constantly working to return it to a state of healthy or the golden balance. So the other thing we talked about last week was that because the process of balancing is so important, that is how we can help so many autoimmune conditions simply by cooling the fire of inflammation that's caused by an immune imbalance between the two T1 and T2 groups. And lastly, the most important thing is that this balance is always ongoing and it's always happening in our body, which means that today or tomorrow is never too late to start making a difference to the balance inside our body immune system. So, with the golden balance behind us, let's move on to today's question. Are these things really mushrooms? And the answer is yes, they are. But more clearly, these are thunder shrooms. Now, I've received a number of questions in the past few weeks about what do thunder shrooms look like? Because the picture on the capsule on the box, it looks like your average mushroom, and then in nature they look like this. And we're going to talk a little bit about the science of why they look like this, and really how there's an ancient wisdom that the very earliest human could have seen just by visually observing a mushroom like this. You imagine the first time you ever seen this, which I guess for many of you it is. But if you know this is a mushroom, and I should say, this grows on the side of a tree. So you can see it clearly on this one, how we have an indentation here. And that is where the mushroom is growing from the side of the tree trunk like this. It's growing this way. And if you can see the size of the tree that it grows on and the thickness and the hardness of the bark of the tree and the similarity to the hardness of these mushrooms, as a first-time observer, some very obvious things would strike you. These mushrooms are wild. They're definitely not grown in a lab somewhere. They're definitely not grown in some plastic bag in someone's kitchen, because these things are heavy. Before we was waiting for the camera to come in, my arm was getting tired because I was holding about 7-8 kilograms of mushrooms, and it's 11 p.m. So, but you can see at first sight that this is a wild thing. And Rafa, can we see the first title? And this one thing that makes it so powerful is that it exists in nature, and nature gives it all sorts of tests. And a mushroom is a very complex being in that it has its own defense mechanisms and it has its own way to survive against the threat of nature and the threats of the environment. So it's a very hearty mushroom. It's a very thick-skinned, and it's got a very nice thick layer of armor, which is very similar to the thickness of tree bark. So you'd observe right away. One of the three things you'd observe about this is that this is definitely wild. Okay. Now, another thing you would definitely observe about this as a mushroom is that this is definitely the fruit of the mushroom because it's growing out the side of a tree. It's so massive. It's definitely not the mycelium of the mushroom, which we can't even see with our eye. So when you see something, a mushroom this big, such as the mushroom, even the mushrooms you eat, those are all known as the fruiting body of the mushroom. And that's important because the mushroom is like a tree in the sense that underneath the soil, what we cannot see with our naked eye is that the mushroom has roots going into the soil or into the area that the mushroom is growing in, or the substrate as it's called. And the roots inside that mushroom are called the mycelium. And this is basically how the mushroom grows and how it finds a new home. And also these networks of growth are how it transports nutrients from the soil or from organisms nearby and gives nutrients to the tree. So its nature of the mushroom's mycelium function is to give nutrients to the tree. So if you think about it like that, the mycelium is almost like the road, and the fruiting body is this is the treasure. Why are they bringing the nutrients? Where are they bringing the nutrients to? Is they're bringing the nutrients to the fruit. Now, the fruit of a mushroom, just like the fruit of a tree, it harnesses all of the concentrated nutrients, all of the goodness of that species that will allow it to reproduce. So in the case of a lemon tree, it will concentrate all of its nutrients in the lemon fruit. And when the fruit is born from the tree, an animal might eat it or will eat the seed and carry the seed, and the seed will go somewhere far, which contains all of the genetic material for the lemon tree to reproduce and therefore to survive. So that very function is why the lemon fruit carries all the genetic material to reproduce and to carry life. And in the same way, a mushroom fruit or a mushroom fruiting body carries all the important information for the mushroom to reproduce in the future. And therefore, it carries all of the medicinal properties and all of the active ingredients that occur 100% naturally, created by nature, but harnessed by us. We know that its fruiting body is where all of the very best active ingredients exist. So when we talk about mushroom extracts, why thunder shrooms? The second point, why thunder shrooms really stands out from any other type of herbal preparation is because we use 100% fruiting body. So it's also interesting to note that when we grow all mushrooms, all mushrooms start out as a mycelium, and they grow inside a rice or a soil, and it's very difficult to separate that mycelium from the thing it's grown in. So in that sense, it's a more mixed presence of mushroom versus a fruiting body, which is 100% pure, only the fruiting body, the mushroom, and nothing else. So that is why when we see this, and the first thing we can observe about it is it's wild. It's definitely not lab grown. The second thing is this thing is the fruit, right? This is definitely not a leaf. It's not a twig. This is something serious. And the third thing we can see is that it's really big. It's big, and if it was growing in nature to be this big, it obviously must be old. So if you were to see this on a tree and observe it next to a tree, which we also know can grow to be thousands of years old, and you can see, if I hold it close up, how similar the texture of the outside of the mushroom is to the bark of some of the longest, most long-lived trees in nature. You might think that, hang on, this thing might be very old, and you'd be right. In ancient texts, this was called, specifically the ones that were shaped like this, were called the millennial old mushroom, because it was believed that they were grown 1,000 years old on trees that were similarly that old. And so A long time ago in ancient China, the royal family was insistent that they get only this age of medicinal mushroom for their emperor. And back then, they thought it was just a really old version of the common medicinal mushrooms they had, but only later we can find out actually it's completely different species. And that's what makes thunder shrooms so special, is that it's really these three things: the fact that it's wild and not lab grown, we're looking at only the fruit of the mushroom, not the root, and that these things are old. These things are aged to survive. And anything that's aged and can survive the harshes of nature has developed a lot of really interesting things inside that allows it to do so. So when we talk about maturity for a mushroom or for a herb, you think about it in a sense of your when were you at your peak power? When were you at your most mature? Everyone has a phase, right? And similarly, mushrooms also have a phase when they reach medical maturity. So we don't have to think about the time we were powerful or the time we were mature. We can get to immune optimal state again with immunomodulation from thunder shrooms. When we combine thunder shrooms with other lifestyle modulations, such as improved diet and many of the other protocols that Daryl talks about, we can see a much faster and a cleaner change when we take a more holistic approach. And so I want you to remember that these are the three things. It's wild, not lab. It's only the fruit, and these things are old. So there's nothing that goes into thunder shrooms that's less than 30 years old. So you can imagine the main cost of thunder shrooms actually comes from leaving it on the tree, undisturbed, unharvested too early before it really reaches its optimal medical maturity. And those three things is what makes thunder shrooms so special. And when we produce them in a special way that we do, that combination is what made the product so unpassable by Daryl. You see, he's got a really great library of therapies and products. And when he learned about thunder shrooms, he insisted he has it because he knows that by balancing the immune system, by improving the immune system, we improve overall health, overall aging, and overall balance. So when I explained to him exactly these three things, that we're talking about wild mushrooms, only the fruit, not the root, and 30 years or older, all backed by research and scientists of the international community of over 15 years, working together to show exactly what formulations and what doses work with what expectations he was in. And when he saw that the effect firsthand, he could tell this was the thing he was looking for to bring the very best to his people. So I want you to remember that when you have your thunder shrooms, that you're talking to something wild, something aged 30 or older, and only the fruit, not the root. You see, thunder shrooms are, well, all mushrooms, they're a very important life species because they work symbiotically with their host. They break down food for the host. They basically bring food in for their host, bring out the trash, and the host gives them somewhere to live. And actually, they make a very good house guest because they bring the food in, bring the trash out. They don't make any noise, and they just need a bit of space to live. So mushrooms actually would make a very good house guest, which is why they can thrive together with so many other species. And in that sense, they become an invaluable part of the natural cycle, as they can become an invaluable part of your immune health as well. So I want to leave it there for today and take a few questions from last week. Okay, here are questions. Okay, so I had some reason why we went into this show today was because I had quite a few questions about mycelium and also about other types of mushrooms. Now, on the last episode, I talked about psychotropic mushrooms, so I won't go into that this episode, but someone asked me about other medicinal mushrooms and the other preparations and other extracts. And I would say definitely go for all mushrooms have their place. Edible mushrooms, button mushrooms in your omelet, for example, these all have an interaction with the human immune system that for the most part is beneficial. In some people, of course, their immune system is not functioning in a way that they would receive the message from all mushrooms as beneficial. They might perceive it as a threat. So that would be really species dependent. In the case of thunder shrooms, we know that 90% of immune issues are linked with a very similar, okay, between 80 and 90% of immune issues are linked with a very similar imbalance, and that what grows naturally in thunder shrooms, according to the three things I just told you, which is that they're wild, only the fruit, and age 30 or older, those natural ingredients work to balance the immune system, which brings down those immune conditions in 80 to 90% of the conditions we see. So yes, that is why we go for these particular extracts, because they have the natural compounds that lower the inflammation, that they lower the immune imbalance as well. So I won't go into specific mushrooms like reishi and turkey. I think you can do your own research. I'll just say that some some mushrooms are maybe ill-advised as far as they might further pro-inflammatory immune activity, when the person eating them might need anti-inflammatory um, immune stimulation or anti-inflammatory reduction. So in that case, I would say definitely be careful with all medicinal mushrooms. And if you have questions, you can probably just focus on thunder shrooms, which we know are good for basically everyone who's listening, of all ages. And in the two preparations, we have critical care, which is really for all ages, including children, at a half dose or a quarter dose, depending on the age, newborn mums, all ages of adolescent teenagers, to support immune development. And then the critical care, which is for people who are older, who have obviously more pressing aging issues, and who might have some, sorry, and also who are not older, but might have some autoimmune conditions or autoimmune symptoms. So that's really the difference between the two products. They don't overlap in the sense that when we extract the natural ingredients, depending on how we extract the compounds and the way we prepare the formulations, the two formulas of Vitalife and Critical Care, although they come from exactly the same natural wild fruiting body, age 30 years or older, exactly the same source, the way that we produce it yields a naturally occurring output that's different. So the two formulas, Vitalife and Critical Care, although they come from the same species, there's no overlap when you take them, because they both have the same overall function of immune health and immune balance, but the critical care is really more on cooling down the over hot, and the Vitalife is really more at pushing up the cool, or the what's weak, and bringing the balance that way. So in that sense, they can be taken together and they can be taken separately. So if you have specific questions, I welcome you to continue emailing me and to email on the show, and I will hopefully answer your questions in the next episode or very soon after that. So look forward to seeing you again very soon next week for another episode of The Miracle of Mushrooms, and have a great week ahead. Talk to you soon. Bye.